at one point I described it as you're running in an oven, and the sun had gone down at one point because it took us so long. Um, and it was still 118 degrees, but out there wasn't a moon. There was no light. That's why he had the full on panic attack, is because it was pitch black. We could barely see the road in front of us, and we could see like 2 feet around us with the light that we had. And so you're running in an oven in pitch black. That's what the night felt like there. It was gnarly.
There's a moment in every hard thing, a race, a climb, a training block, a season of life, where you hit the edge of what you thought you could do. Most people stop there, but some don't.
And this show is all about the ones who didn't. What they found on the other side, what they learned about themselves, and how those lessons followed them into every hard thing they came after.
I'm Nathan Baumeister.
And I'm Matt Carlson.
This is What Remains, an Okape podcast. Well, Heber Cannon, thank you for joining us on this episode of What Remains.
Thanks for having me.
I've been a longtime fan of all the content that you created. I've known your brother for several decades. The amount of stories that I've heard of the Cannon brothers is just absolutely entertaining.
Yeah, happy to be here, man.
Before we jump in, could you just provide just a little bit of context for everyone who's listening, kind of who you are, what your background is, and, you know, from a physical pursuit perspective, kind of what's your poison of choice, if you will?
Oh, okay. So, I guess my elevator pitch as to what I am and who I am. I'm a filmmaker who for a long time worked for a company called CrossFit. I helped them produce everything from YouTube shorts on how to cook food to a pilot that landed us on ESPN for the sport of fitness, to eventually making and producing 6 feature-length documentaries that were streamed on Netflix. They were the best-selling documentaries for the year on iTunes. And in 2018, I was fired from that company because they got rid of basically all of their media team for a short window. They had some big changes as a company, and I saw that as an opportunity to take my talents elsewhere and started our YouTube channel called the Buttery Bros, where now I travel the world, work out with incredible people, and eat pancakes, and kind of have this dream job.
Well, you know, pancakes are near and dear to my heart. I shared with you last time that we met. I've spent the last decade perfecting, to my taste, what I think are the best pancakes in the world. But it's not very often I get to really dive into the finer arts and details of pancakes.
Yeah. It's hard to go wrong with a pancake unless you're Belgium. You know, like, not just because they just beat us in the World Cup, but I am not a fan. That's the one pancake I've had that I have not been a fan of.
Yeah. You really had to go for the heart there for Matt, didn't on the Belgium loss, didn't you?
I'm still feeling it today. It's all right. So.
Me too, man.
I love that you've spent just a good portion of your professional life capturing stories of other people, kind of pushing past not just the limits that they might have perceived themselves, but literally the limits of what people thought humans were capable of. Right. I mean, when you think about especially the early years of CrossFit and finding people who can squat heavy, run long, swim, sprint, Olympic lift, do gymnastic movements and all that stuff, and you look to see where they've gone, it really has pushed the limits of what is capable. But I also love that you have lived that life as well. So as you think about growing up, and when did that spark first really kind of come in where you're like, I want to live a life of adventure, of physical pursuit, of trying to find what I'm actually capable of. And man, if someone gives me a limit, I'm going to figure out how to get past it. Like, where did that come from?
I don't know. I grew up, you know, my older brother Chase, but I grew up in a family of boys. So there's 5 boys, 1 girl. And we were always just doing different types of sports. And I was always fascinated by that. I probably, of all my brothers, played the most eclectic amount of sports. For a period of time, I was playing roller hockey because I couldn't find an ice hockey place nearby. I took karate. I was doing jujitsu. I was boxing. I was swimming. I was playing basketball, soccer, cross country. I ran a marathon when I was 15 years old. And I want to say when I was like 12, my brother bought and brought home the first time I ever lifted weights. We just had a bench in our basement with a barbell and some heavy plates. And I was, I think, 100 pounds. So I was like, oh, I could do 100 pounds. I could not bench 100 pounds. I was by myself, just getting slammed.
Were you by yourself?
Yeah,
No.
Full on, like, had to tuna can the barbell off myself to get up, and didn't learn my lesson because I was like, oh, I must have just done it wrong. So let me try
again. Oh no.
So it happened twice before I was like, maybe just the bar is going to be enough to just start. Because I didn't realize that the bar weighed anything, it's like it didn't dawn on me.
Yeah, it's just a bar, whatever.
A bar, yeah. But from an early age, I guess I would say that I was interested in physical fitness. There was definitely a period during my teens where I was like, it's teens and college, where aesthetics was a big part of it, where I wanted to look jacked because I was just this young, skinny little kid that could run far, but couldn't figure out why I couldn't put on any mass, even though I didn't I just ate one meal a day and exercised every other. I wasn't like wouldn't say I had a problem with food. I just didn't understand it.
Yeah, you didn't understand how to use it. Right?
Yeah, it wasn't like I was starving myself. I just didn't think I needed to eat. I just was, I was just doing things. And then slowly over years of I wasn't studying exercise, sports, and science. I was studying English and film in college, but going to the gym every day. And my job in college was, it's funny now, but I worked as a call collector for Gold's gyms around the country. So I would be like, if you miss a payment, I would call you.
You were the guy?
I was the guy, but
I think I might have talked to you one time.
Probably, yeah. They gave us like different accounts. I remember I was calling people during Hurricane Katrina, and they were like, "We're being evacuated. I can't worry about my Gold's Gym right now." And after like the 20th call, I went to my manager. I was like, "We got to stop calling people in Louisiana today."
Yeah, can we call a different state?
But I had that job so that I could have a free gym membership through college and have a good one. Because like they had one at the University of Utah. It's a decent gym, but all the cool kids went to Gold. So that's where I wanted to go. So I always had this fascination with it. And then when I found the movie 300, like I watched, the movie was fun. It was really cool. And everyone was like, dude, I want to look like Gerard Butler and Michael Fassbender. Like, these guys look incredible. How do they train? And then I found a video on how they train and saw that they were being trained by this guy named Mark Twight, which led me to his gym's website, Jim Jones, which ironically happened to be here locally in Salt Lake City. And I figured that out because they were throwing medicine balls on Skyline High School's track and field, which is just up the street.
Yeah, so you recognized it. Nice.
I recognized the track. I was like, I've ran meets there. What is this thing? And their methodology of training was very different than what you would see in muscle and fitness at the time. It was buys and tries, back and, legs.
Yeah, pick your day, pick your muscle group.
And it was very much like, you're an endurance guy or you're a bodybuilding guy. And I don't even know the difference between like an Olympic lifting guy and a powerlifting guy. Like that, I was very ignorant to the different types of lifting and weightlifting at the time. But that led me to, for months, I was trying to find ways to train because it was a very exclusive gym. I couldn't figure out where it was located. There was no address. And a few months went by at my friend Ben Holling's house. He had suddenly lost a lot of weight and we were asking him how he lost weight. And he showed me this photo of a gym called CrossFit 801. And I was like, that's what I've been looking for. And then I immediately went into this deep dive, looking through all of the CrossFit Journal. They had this article called What is Fitness, written by the founder of CrossFit, Greg Glassman, and the methodology, I guess almost the theology of their fitness made so much sense to me that I immediately became essentially a cult member of CrossFit for the next decade, studying and coming to fully understand the different exercise pathways and different ways to train and why you would want to combine running and lifting and what the goal was. And that to me became the ultimate pursuit of fitness, because for years it was like, okay, I don't want to run because I don't want to lose my gains. And also I don't want to just run because I don't want to become, too on this side of fitness. I don't want to just become strong. So yeah,
So let's just do all of it.
yeah, let's just do all of it. Yeah, exactly.
Did you compete in some of the games then as well, or were you kind of on that level, or?
No, I was never in my head, I was like, okay, after watching the 2009 games, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it to the 2010 games. And then I took that season to like bulk up because I had now finally had met with a nutritionist and all of it started to really make sense for me. And so 2010, I was like, okay, this is my bulking year. And then by 2011, anything had surpassed my level of fitness that I could ever achieve. That was during the window where I had I'd owned my own little video production company here in Salt Lake City, found CrossFit as a client, and was covering the 2010 season of the sport of CrossFit, along with basically every other weekend traveling for that company, filming seminars, nutrition videos, and essentially that led me to working for them full time.
So where did I mean this drive to like find ways to allow yourself to test yourself and push yourself physically in all of these different directions. Could you put your finger on like why? Like why do you do it? It's a lot of work. And then not only did you start doing it, but then you also were like, now I'm just going to live this life and I'm going to document people doing it too.
Honestly, it's essentially supposed to be just a stepping stone. My goal was never to do YouTube or do what I'm doing or documentaries. Like I didn't even watch documentaries and still don't. Like I would rather watch the latest Christopher Nolan movie. I was intended to go and make movies in Hollywood. That was my job. That was my goal in college, was like, okay, I'm going to work my way to California through Santa Cruz to work with this company called CrossFit. And that's just going to put me closer
That's
to
going to be
LA.
your way to get there.
Yeah. And then in 2018, I went down to Hollywood and I took meetings and had not interviews, but like pretty decent conversations with some fairly important people down there. And I saw the writing on the wall of like what a lifestyle would look like working in Hollywood versus having control of my own destiny as a YouTuber. And I was like, this kind of sounds more fun, even though it's a little bit more trivial. I'm going to go do this and at least see this out. And on, if you know the history of CrossFit, I felt like I hadn't closed the chapter of that book yet. And so I felt like I needed to do that before I could move on. Otherwise, I would have felt like I left something there that needed to be concluded.
Well, one of the things that I love about your story and the thread that you've shared so far is that all the pursuits, both professionally and physically, it wasn't about like being the best or get to the top or win the CrossFit games, or even from a film perspective, it might have been at a point like, yeah, I do want to get to the CrossFit games. Oh, but I can't. But that doesn't mean I'm going to quit. I want to make feature films in Hollywood. But you know what? Maybe that's actually not the life. Maybe it won't be the pinnacle, but there is something else that really feeds me, but that might not be considered the top of the top, but it's still something that I'm going to go after. How do you find that balance between like trying to always go for the top? Because I think a lot of people do have that mindset. It's like, I'm either going to go to win or be the best or whatever, then I'm not going to do it at all, versus doing it for the love of the thing and for what it gives you rather than what you can achieve.
Well, I think that's something I've discovered over time in life, right? Like when I was younger, I wanted to go make movies in Hollywood, but I didn't understand what that was going to take. And then once I figured that out, I was like, well, that means I'm not going to have any sort of stable family life to a degree. It's finding what are your real goals and how do you achieve those? Am I going to be happier? Like my goal is to have fun and have joy and experience a more fulfilled life. I'm not going to have that if I'm in a trailer all day in a foreign country trying to tell some story that's been written on a script here. And I found that when I was making content for CrossFit, where I was following around these kids that were training full time to be the fittest on earth and seeing like, man, what are they giving up as a result of what they're achieving? Yeah, they're achieving incredible things. That time period for me as a 35-year-old man has probably slipped. I'm not going to make it to be the fittest on earth, nor do I at this point want to be. I'm a father. I have kids. I have a wife. What do I really want? And it didn't align with my life resume that I wanted to build. I think there's a point where as you get older, you find what becomes more important to you. And then that's what I start to dive in. So like, yeah, there's ways that like, I look at Mr. Beast. He's the top of the top for YouTube. I don't want to have his life. I don't want to do what he's doing. I want to have like a small portion of that. So what can I do that both fulfills me creatively and fulfills me as a human and gives me the life I want to have? And that's really what's happened as I've matured.
Yeah. How do you get to that point though? Because I think so many people, especially young kids, and even people listening, is like you have that goal of like wanting to achieve, and then along the way, you're like, you keep asking yourself questions about what's really important. But like, I think so many people lose sight of that, or I can't even get outside of their way of thinking to have like enough like awareness to even ask those questions. Like, how did you get to that point in your life?
I think I mean, I wouldn't say it was intuitive or something that came easy for me. I mean, even when we started the Buttery Bros, it was hard on my wife because I was just ignorant to how much trouble she was having being home alone. Because there was a time period when we were building this channel, and I was sleeping like 4 to 5 hours a night, working, editing, traveling. And in 2020, before COVID hit, I had looked at the calendar, and it was potentially going to work out that I would be traveling from the beginning of March through June and be home, I think 4 days.
Oh,
And then COVID hit. And so like it went from like traveling every day, being in a foreign country. Like the beginning of 2020, before COVID hit, I had gone to London, Spain, Australia, Miami, and was going to go to California the day 3 days later before everything shut down.
yeah.
And
So
that was
basically 2 months. That's what you did.
well, not even in 2 months. That was like starting in mid-January. So that was like over a
Wow.
6-week period. Like that's what our travel was going to look like, and it was going to continue on. And we got really lucky, but that also gave me a time to pause and be like, well, hey, I don't need to do that kind of traveling to create the content we want to create. How can we make this work in other ways? But it also, like, the other side of it, Matt, was it made me take step and pause and look at what my kids are going to have as a father, and knowing like, hey, my time is limited here. The one thing that we don't have is time. It's just going to continue ticking away. And I want to be a present father. I want to be with my kids. I want them to see me around when they're doing their goals in their life. So that definitely made me want to make changes for our business plans moving forward through 2020. And then that's still something I struggle with to this day, where it's like, okay, we've got this trip, this brand wants us to go here for 4 days. Then the next week we are going to be here for 5 days. Like, is this value worth it for what I'm giving up? Because I don't really want to go do that thing. I want to be here with my kids, but I also need to provide for them. So what's the give and take there? So it's an interesting balance, but it's something that's a constant thing that I'm shuffling through on my brain.
One of the things that's so fun to watch kind of in your arc as a storyteller and filmmaker is, first you wanted to be a feature film, found out this CrossFit thing, did some documentary style stuff, telling other people's story. And now a lot of your content, you've turned the camera on you. You've become one of the main characters and capturing a lot of like, you're literally testing yourself and pushing you and your friends past their limits of what you think could be possible. And so I want to spend time talking about what are those adventures? What are you learning as you're doing that? What that's been like to go from behind the scenes to like in front of the camera. But before, I just want one more question about your past. And that's when was the first time you can really remember where you did something that pushed you past anything you ever thought was possible, but then somehow you made it to the other side that really whet your appetite to kind of live a life doing that and documenting that?
What's funny is a lot of them I didn't even document, and some of them I failed. Like,
hey, the failures are some of the best ones, man.
Yeah. And I'm where I'm now, I'm like, man, I can't find a photo of this ultra marathon I failed. I can't even prove that I signed up for this thing. So I failed two things where I attempted that I can remember off the top of my head. One was the first time we went to Death Valley, and me and my brothers attempted to run a marathon, the hottest day of the year, which is hard to know. The goal was to run a marathon on the hottest day of the year at high noon, because Badwater, the ultra marathon that starts there in Death Valley in Badwater, starts at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. so that you're running through the hottest part of the world at night, and then you finish on Mount Whitney. It's a really cool race, and nothing against that race, but you're not running during the hottest part of the day in the hottest part of the world. You've moved 60 miles away by the time the sun's really pounding on you, or maybe 30 miles away. We wanted to start in the hottest place at the hottest time of the day on the hottest day of the year. And I made it, I think 8 miles before I was like I luckily got into the car, and the car's air conditioning went out. And before I could get out, they were driving into town, and essentially I had been pulled by the course. This is not, this is my parents driving us. This wasn't like we had an
Your crew was mom and dad.
Yeah. Crew was mom and dad. And also like there was only 5 of us on the road that day, like it wasn't this big event. So,
did any of your brothers make it?
Yeah, 3, everyone else. I was the only one that didn't make it. So like it pissed me off for years. And 18 years later, I went back down there and redid this thing. And it happened to be the hottest day in history. And so it's a pretty awesome story that we've got now. So I give credit to my older brother, Chris, who's the one that dragged us out to do that. Around the same time, he and Chase were super into Ironman training. And so they got us to sign up for a 70.3, which I did with absolutely zero training, except for like lifting weights. Like this is the buys and tries era. And then a few years later, he signed me up for a full Ironman. And all I did to train for that was CrossFit. So for a year leading up to it, the most I had run was maybe 3 miles. And I had biked once and swam in open water once. And then I went out and ran a full Ironman. And then, so doing those things, like to me, I wasn't that impressed with Ironman athletes, because I was like, well, I could do this without, really doing much effort for it. Even though my time was atrocious, like I barely made the time cutoff, but I could claim the same thing that you could for 95% of the field, which is I ran an Ironman. It doesn't matter that it took me 16 hours. It took you 12. Both of us took forever, and we're 5 hours longer than the people that are winning this thing. Like it didn't, and I was more like interested in how much can I back squat at that point. So I've since come around and been way more interested in that sport as of late, but for a long period of time, I wasn't that impressed with endurance stuff, just because I had done endurance things before and I hadn't done these other things. So I wanted to experience the strength side of fitness. For a long time, I've been doing physical challenges and pushing myself. And I don't know when that became like a priority for my lifestyle. It's just always something I've inherently done.
Which is wild. Like, I don't know. I think you're the first person that I've ever met that's did a Ironman without any sort of like really long distance training. That is like unheard of. I mean, were you sore? Were you like injuries from that? Like what happened after doing your first Ironman? That's insane.
Okay. So 2 stories. So that was 2009. I'd been married about 3 months, and I had just started working for CrossFit. And the first job I did for CrossFit was the week after. So I finished the Ironman Saturday, flew home, and I was incredibly sore. My body was just beat up. And during that shoot, this is the first time I've worked with anyone from CrossFit. There's Tony Budding, who was the head of media at the time, was here. Rory McKernan, who has he was like the face for the CrossFit Games for a long time. He was the host. He flew to Salt Lake, and we were filming here. And I remember picking up my backpack at the end of the day and thinking that I had pulled my back in front of these people. I was like, oh my gosh, what's just happened? Because I had taken the week off and done very little. I think it was just a little muscle spasm. I ended up being fine. But that's the one thing I've definitely learned over time is you can build up to these things and you can do really hard things and not be as sore. But if you just jump in and run a marathon, the next day your legs are gonna have a hard time moving.
It's gonna be bad.
And that's what happened. So I think what really got me into doing dumb physical challenges, what I think is the very first one, was that same older brother, Chris, came home and was like, hey, my friend has signed up for a marathon and he's been training for 9 months. And I think that I can beat him by just signing up and going and doing this. And I think he went, and I think he did, with zero training.
Wow.
And then he turned to me and he's like, the science here, Heber, is that Oprah can run a marathon. So you can just do it without training.
That's science for sure.
Yeah, that's the science. She's older, she's slightly overweight. She has to train for it, but like, we can just go do
We
this.
can do it.
And the problem was we did. And then like, I think what and for a long time, like I thought it was just inherently cool to be talented without trying, without working. And I think I missed out on a lot of opportunities to get better especially when I was younger and in high school with like cross country and track, because I could have maybe been a really good 400-meter cross track and field athlete or any of those, but I wanted to just have that talent without effort.
Without effort. Yeah.
And that was cool. The cool thing wasn't to work for it. But now as I've gotten older, I'm like, I would way rather invest in the kid that's working hard to have the talent than the kid that just is born with it.
Well, you can go farther, right? Like you can do more if you actually do take the time to prepare. I wonder if lifting kind of helped cure you of that a little bit, because like you couldn't just grab the barbell and lift 100 pounds, right? Like you couldn't just grab the back squat, put on 315 pounds and just do it. You have to progress. There's no way that you could just figure it out.
Yeah. If you want to be humbled, go into a CrossFit gym and follow the programming for a month. Like every other day, it's something where it's like, even still after doing this for almost 15 years, I think 16 or 17 years now. If I go and do a month of programming in a CrossFit gym, there's going to be stuff that's programmed that I have the struggle to do. And if you don't continue working on it, it's hard. Like you slowly build patience and you feel the reward of the effort that you put in practicing. And when you PR your snatch after working on it for months, that's a extremely rewarding feeling that is definitely worth the effort.
So coming around from that's kind of where it started to now, turning the camera on yourself and your friends, doing these crazy physical challenges. A lot of them are kind of endurance at the moment, at least, that you focused on. I wonder if you could share, because you touched on this one already. I just want to dig into it. You tried to run in the desert, do a marathon. You made it 8 miles, completely failed, embarrassed about it. And then you're like, that sat in the back. That sat in the back of your head, didn't it?
That's cooking back there. Yeah.
You just never let it go. So you're like, okay, now we're doing it. And it ends up that you choose to do it on literally the hottest day ever. Yeah, I mean, walk us through like how that was and what it was like to actually, after all of those years, to come back around and complete it. But then not only just complete it, like complete it at a level 11, if you will, from Spinal Tap.
Yeah, that's essentially what it was.
This one goes to 11.
I think it was 127 when we did it in 125, 127 when we did it in 2006. And it was 133, 135 on the day we did it in 2024. And we recorded off the pavement, because that's just like the weather reporting. Off the pavement with a laser, we recorded the pavement being 169 degrees.
Wow, so that was the radiant heat coming off from the pavement.
Yeah, it was brutally hot that day. But we didn't know. Like, we're not there being like, man, this is the hottest day in history. We just got out of the car and we're like, man, this is hot. This is going to be awesome. I knew the two guys that are regularly on the show with me, my business partner, Marsden, and then Julian. I knew that they weren't going to do this. Like, they're just not this.
It's not their thing.
It's not their thing. But I have two psychopathic friends that are up for whatever. So I text them probably 2 to maybe 3 weeks in advance. And I had been talking about it for a long time with them. But I was like, hey, I think I've got a window of time in July where we could go down. I'm going to schedule a shoot in Las Vegas with some athletes, and we could just drive out to Death Valley and do this challenge. Do you want to do it? And they're like, yeah. So they ran in the heat a few times. Tyson, one of my buddies, came over to my house, and we biked in my sauna, and we did like a whole circuit of 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, biking as hard as you could at 165 degrees in the sauna. which was excellent training. And I had been doing a lot of heat training at that time. But we get out there and we made some mistakes. I made the mistake of not calling my brothers and asking them more specific questions about what we did. And there's definitely like some minor things that I would change that would make a world of difference when it comes to cooling now. But the plan was we're going to walk the whole thing. We're going to try and run like 10 minutes on, 2 minutes off, and then slowly work it down to maybe 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off. The people filming were extremely skeptical that this was going to happen. And if you know my business partner, Mars, he's a phenomenal person, great fun, but he can kind of be like Eeyore at times where like he just like doesn't see the positive or the optimism. He kind of isn't like he's not the face you want to see when you're in it, because he's not going to be the guy that's like, you got this, dude. He's going to be like, hey, maybe
I told you it was going to be hard.
Yeah, I told you we should probably like, this sucks for me. And you're out, you're like, we should just go, you know?
So hey, you gotta have both, right? One on each shoulder, right?
Yeah, maybe that's
one tells you go for it. The other one, you don't have to do it. Just stop. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. You can pull back, but we got to mile 4, and at that point we had to get in the car. None of us were really talking to cool off, and I was extremely worried. I was like, okay, if my body temperature stays this hot, we're not going to make it. Like,
yeah.
It's just
mile 4 of 26.2, right?
Yeah.
Like,
but this is the first time we've stopped. That was the mistake. Was previously, what I didn't remember after the fact is that in 2006, every mile we would stop and dunk our shirts in the cooler or hat and then put it on and then start running again. We weren't doing that. The first mile, we didn't even stop to drink. We just ran through. Second mile, I think we stopped and we had a brief moment and then we continued on. And by the time we got to mile 4, it was like we had gone too far and overheated too much without stopping. So if we just stopped along the way, because my memory of 2006 that always sticks with me is right the miles before I was put in the car, I would dunk whatever. I think I was dunking my hat, and then there was like a bandana that came off of it. And then I would sip on the water coming off of that as I was running. I remember feeling kind of sick and realizing on one of the mile breaks that I was dunking my hat in the same bucket of water, essentially, that we had all these drinks in, but my older brother would put his disgusting feet in there.
No, you were sipping on it.
Yeah, it dawned on me as I was running. I was like, this is the same water that Chris is putting his foot in. And so that's what stuck with me. And so that's what all of us were thinking was like, okay, well, we can't dunk our water in the cooler. But what we should have done, which is so stupid, because we had enough coolers, we should have had a cooler with just ice and water that you dunked in. We should have had a dunk.
That was the dunking cooler.
We had the dunk cooling, and then because we had 3 coolers. We had plenty of space for this. But we didn't do that. And I think that ultimately one of the 3 of us ended up getting heat stroke, and we pulled, I kind of like forced him into the car at mile, I want to say right around mile 13. I was like, hey, Tyson's not doing well. And he's too mentally strong. He thinks he can keep going. You need to keep him in the car. And so we hid him in the car for a mile, and then he came out and was like, hey man, I think I can make it. And I was like, as long as you can keep pace, well, I'm fine with that. Like, you're an adult, you can make this decision. And he ended up having a full panic attack later. We probably should have taken him to the hospital, but no. I laugh about it now, but I'm sure it was
scary at the time.
It could have been very, very scary for him. And it almost cost us doing the whole marathon at mile 25 is when we had to, I think it was mile 24 and a half is when he was ultimately pulled from the course. But my plan was, hey, we're going to finish the marathon and walk the last mile for Tyson so he can get his full marathon. Yeah, it was a brutal day, but it was definitely core memories. Death Valley National Park is incredibly beautiful. The sunset that night was something that I look fondly on. And then the friendship I now have with Billy and Tyson from that run is I'll always cherish those guys.
What does it feel like to run in that immense heat? Like, for those that have not done it before, like I'm trying to fathom like how hot that is. Like, what does it feel like on your body when you like just running that pavement?
Honestly, it's like running in a sauna. Like the sauna training was spot on for what it feels like. At one point, I described it as you're running in an oven, and the sun had gone down at one point because it took us so long, and it was still 118 degrees. But out there wasn't a moon. There was no light. That's why he had the full on panic attack, is because it was pitch black. We could barely see the road in front of us, and we could see like 2 feet around us with the light that we had. And so you're running in an oven in pitch black. That's what the night felt like there. It was gnarly.
Wow. How do you like mentally just keep going in that moment, right? Like, how do you just find yourself just like, I mean, like for somebody like me, I'd be like, I'm out. Like, this isn't like, it's too hard. Like, how do you just like mentally get there?
I think that comes with time and effort and repetition, time under tension. For the first 4 miles, I was like, man, if it keeps up, we're not going to make this. But then you get little wins along the way and you start to build momentum. And that by mile 6, I was like, we're finishing this thing. Like, it was not a question in my mind of if, it was how long is it going to take? And I'm just going to make these guys sit out here until we get through this, because I'm not leaving. Like, if they have to take someone to the hospital, we've got 2 cars. I'm going to have someone just stay with me and I'll finish this thing. Like, that was my plan. Like, it was never a question of if I'm going to finish. It was just, it's going to take me a long time. And that's the beauty of doing unsanctioned races, is that time doesn't matter. It's just duration, like distance.
Just do the thing.
Just do the thing. And so, yeah, for something like that, it was, hey, we're going to cool down if we need to and get some snacks in the car, and then we're going to pick back up and go again. I think there was only a minor panic attack when we had to pull the guy from the course for a mile. And then at the same time, I did inventory on how much water we had. And I was like, we didn't get enough water. Someone's got to go to town and get us some water. But once she came back with water, not only this, I don't know if you guys saw this video, phenomenal episode for the Buttery Bros channel. One of my favorites. But halfway through, we're in the desert. It's 135 degrees. I thought it was a mirage. She comes up. She's got water. She shows back up with the second car. She's got slushies, like full on ices.
Yeah.
Like, that's the last thing you're expecting in the middle of nowhere. Like, you can't see civilization anywhere, and you've got a full on slushie you're eating. It was incredible.
Yeah, you're like, that's that little hope, right? Like, just little things like that are like, oh, hey, I can go on forever.
Yeah, you find these little wins, and I think that's Jesse Itzler. I love his little mantra is like, don't give pain a voice. If something hurts or something bothers you, the more you talk about it, the more you think about it, the more it's going to fester and build. Where if you take inventory, you're like, yeah, this sucks. Okay. Like, okay, I've acknowledged that now, but I'm going to focus on these things that I can control and keep moving. And that's essentially what I've done on any long endurance thing for the last decade or so, is focus on the little wins, take inventory of things that suck, and then put them in the back pocket and don't worry about them because you can't control them.
And then move on. Yeah. When I did 29:029, Jesse was on the mountain and he had all of us saying over and over again, it's crazy. I just don't get tired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, it's the craziest thing. I don't know what this is, but I never get tired as everyone's dying.
Yeah, you're like barely able to take a step. Yeah, I can definitely hear Jesse saying that.
So
I like that guy.
Yeah, he is a lot of fun. As you look at like currently what you're doing, what are some of your favorite ones that you've done recently, and what are some of the ones that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so I turned 40 a couple of years ago, and I came up with this like idea that I wanted to go back to kind of the beginning of this whole thing. I wanted to do this series called Fittest at 40, where for the longest time, for over a decade, I had been training to be the jack of all trade. You know, I had back squatted the most I'd ever back squatted, but at the same time, I was also running and doing gymnastics. And so these other elements of fitness. And so when I turned 40, I was like, okay, well, what happens when I sport specific train for one specific goal for 3 months max? What can I do in that time period? And so I knew it would be harder to probably build strength than it would be to build endurance. I said, okay, I'm going to start with strength. So I started by training 3 months, maybe a little bit less, to PR my back squat, bench press, and deadlift. And then I accomplished that. Yeah. And then I did the next 3 months.
Classic power lifts. I like it.
Just power lifts, simple, stupid strength. You know, like it doesn't take a whole lot of technique. There's some technique, but it's just, you just got to muscle through it. Then we went to more a finesse lift, like in power with the Olympic lifts. So I wanted to PR my clean and jerk and snatch. And so I got a phenomenal weightlifting coach, and she helped me through 3 months of training and lifting, leading up to when I PR'd my snatch at 202 pounds and my clean and jerk at like 267.
Nice.
And so I was stoked with that. And then, I think the next thing was I was going to try and PR the open. And, if I'm remembering correct, yeah. So then we went to Colombia. I came home from Colombia. I got wildly sick and, wasn't able to train to prepare for the CrossFit Open, but that was going to be my next achievement, was the open, was to now take that strength and include endurance stuff. And within a year, try and PR my marathon and maybe my Ironman time by the end of it. Like, I was kind of playing with some different ideas, but I got really sick, wasn't able to train. And by the time the open came around, I was like barely working out again. Or back to like feeling like myself. Like, it was like a solid 6 weeks of just like not feeling good. So I was like, okay, well, that window of time has passed. Let's move on to the next thing. And the next thing I think was the Death Valley Marathon. And I didn't really have like a training block. I wasn't like running every day to prepare for it. I just started running in the heat and did that. And that wasn't like, I just wanted to check that off my bucket list essentially. So I attacked that. And then I kind of enjoyed that endurance and how I felt and what I have accomplished at the end of that. So I said, okay, the next thing I want to do, I don't need to be fast to PR my Ironman. I just need to be faster.
Yeah, you just need to do a little bit of training, right? You did zero training last time. Now you just need to do a little bit of training.
Yes. So I was like, okay, what happens if I would say it was essentially like maybe 90 days, but really, James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy, found out he's heard I was registering for an Ironman. And he was like, I want to coach you. And I was like, sick. Awesome. 100%. Let's do this. And then we ended up like never connecting until finally in October, I was like, hey man, like, this is 45 days away.
Got anything for me, buddy?
Yeah. And I was like, okay. And I started talking to another friend who essentially gave me a great Excel spreadsheet of workouts that he had his mom and dad do to prepare for an Ironman. But he's a very smart individual. Anthony Parasini he has a coaching program called the Hybrid Engine, where he focuses mainly on high rocks athletes. But he essentially gave me a template that I could follow. And it was probably mid-September. So there was a solid 2 months where I was training extremely hard to prepare for that Ironman. And I PR'd that by almost 2.5 hours. And I thoroughly fell in love with the training for that and gained a whole new respect for that sport on this time around, and really enjoyed, again, those same 2 dudes came out. We had another 3 guys come and join us for that Ironman in Arizona in the fall of 2024. Because of the excitement I had in that, I was more interested in training like that and the joy that came from it than I was to circle back to do the CrossFit Open again in 2025 at this point. And the next season 4, there's some stuff that happened in the CrossFit space that we can talk about if we want. But I was just like, my heart wasn't in it and I wasn't ready to do that. So in 2025, I was like, okay, well, I've already PR'd my full Ironman time. What would it take to PR my half? And I beat that, I think, by another 2 hours. And then I've just continued on this endurance challenge thing and PR'd my marathon. So to get us to today, June of 2025, I PR'd my half Ironman. July of 2025, I PR'd my full marathon time by about 30 minutes.
Nice.
And then the next weekend, with zero preparation, I ended up pacing my cousin. Like, I showed up to run 5 miles with him on a marathon. He was doing this very extreme triathlon where they swam in the mountains here in Utah, a full 2.4 miles. They biked on a course that was as hard of elevation gains as some of the Tour de France courses, like really gnarly climbing. And then the marathon was through the mountains. So you're like bagging peaks as you're going. I showed up to thinking I was going to run 4 miles with him, having just had a burger and a shake. His official pacer was not able to keep up and was getting sick and was becoming a liability. So I was like, oh, I'll just finish with you.
I'll just keep going.
And I made it, and I was actually very like fresh by the end of it and felt fine, even though I had like only a bottle of podium salt and electrolytes. Shout out, podium, with me for the first like 17 miles before I found like an aid station that was just a dude in a car, where I could refuel on some more stuff to then finish this thing. And finishing that, I was like, okay, the only other thing I've attempted in my life and failed, arguably, is as an ultra marathon. And I'm not even sure which ultra marathon it was, but I know the hardest one is Leadville. So maybe I can prepare for Leadville at this point. And so that led me through running regularly for the first time out of all of this. I've started running regularly in September of 2025 to now in March. I was able to register for Leadville and start officially training for that as of April 1st. So
Yeah.
that's
And
where we're at.
just for everyone listening, when is the race? So we're recording this in July of 26.
July
When's
8th,
the race?
I think it's roughly 45 days away. It's August 22nd.
Nice. Very cool. And you've done some fun, like most people wouldn't call them training runs, but at this point, as you're getting ready for Leadville, they are kind of training runs. You did rim to rim to rim recently with a whole bunch of friends. I think, what was it for the 250, the semi-quincentennial of the United States? You went and ran about, was it 25 miles up in the mountains?
Yeah, the training that day was run 5 hours. And I was like, well, that's roughly what a marathon takes if I'm just, slow. So I'll go do that in the mountains. So I ran a marathon in the mountains. The goal was to just run 25, but you can't just run 25 when you know a marathon's just a little bit further.
I mean, it's right there. Might as well, right?
I just did a couple more loops around the Brighton circle, and then that ended up being 26 miles. And then the other harder one I did was we ran, probably out of all of these, even including rim to rim, that same cousin that I ran the triathlon with last year was like, hey, let's go run a marathon during the night from Friday night to Saturday morning. This is like 3 weeks ago. I was like, sounds awesome. But we ended up picking this course where the first 2 miles took us like an hour 10 because we were just going straight up.
Yeah, I was going to say it had to have been just nothing but a climb then, huh?
Yeah, it was climbing and then like almost like a scramble on 2 of the peaks at the top. And luckily those 2, the first hardest 2, we had some sunlight. So it wasn't as treacherous as it could have been had we reached those peaks at midnight, which could have been the plan. But we ended up doing this big gnarly. Ended up being 29 miles through Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon. And it was awesome. It was fun. But I was totally, again, I find myself in these positions where I'm not prepared. I had, 2 500 milliliters of water, not realizing that we weren't going to find water stations along the way, and thinking it was going to be the marathon we did the previous summer. So it was going to be easier and colder, and I would be mentally prepared for it and have food. This time I had enough food, probably not enough water. After this marathon last weekend for the 4th, I'm going to buy one of those filters where you can filter water fairly quickly in streams.
Yeah, it's needed for sure. When you're doing unaided runs like you're doing, that is a must for sure.
Thank goodness the Brighton store was open because that's where I found at mile 18 of the marathon I did on the 4th. I was like, I really should probably get some food and use the restroom. So I found that Brighton was open. I could go get a giant Coke and a Snickers and use the restroom and finish strong.
What do you do in those situations where you find yourself unprepared like that? Are you just like, well, what are you going to do? Like, I mean, to me, I'm like having a small panic attack listening to this. It's amazing.
On the 2-night, the marathon last summer and this one, last summer it was easy because I could see the writing on the wall by about mile 7 that like, hey, homie is not going to be able to make this.
I'm going to have to step up.
I'm going to have to step up, and there's not a choice. And my cousin has had a way harder day than I have. So like, he's the priority. If anyone's going to have trouble getting out, it's going to be him and this other guy. So I just siphoned my water, and I was fairly smart leading into it because I knew there might be a possibility I'd be dumb enough to just do the whole marathon. So I'd run 3 miles that morning as a part of a run club, gone to Crown Burger, had a giant shake and fries and burger with like the idea that maybe I need to have some fuel. When I got with him, I was like, maybe I'll run 10 miles, so I should probably have a lot of carbs. So I ended up downing, I think, 160 grams of carbohydrates in a 20-minute window while they started at Solitude, and where I was going to join them was about 3 miles down the road. So I drove down the road and slammed some food and salt. And so what I'm pretty good at is just like eating an obscene amount of carbohydrates and sugar, which can fuel me for a long time, and then being patient throughout the rest of it. I haven't been mid-race, knock on wood, where I'm like cramping too bad. I've had the only time that's only happened one time. I guess you might call that a failure. The only time it's become a problem was I joined. So James Lawrence, I've talked about him before. He's done 100 Ironmans in 100 days, and for the Buttery Bros, we filmed day, I think it was like 88, and we were told that we were the first like outside media that had come to talk about his story.
Yeah,
And I was
which
like,
is nuts because this is like the most amazing endurance feat ever.
this is an insane endurance feat and nobody's talking about it. This is crazy. And like our video, I could see, I was like, this video is not going to be very good. Let's make a cooler video. So let's come back on the 100th and follow him through the 100th. And then the night before I was like, what if I just did it with him? Like I've seen his paces, like he's not doing it that fast. So I was like, I'll just hop in. And had it been like day 95 pace, wouldn't have been a problem. I could have kept up. Maybe not on the bike, but definitely on the run.
Yeah, he kept the bike pace pretty good the whole time.
Yeah, I think the bike pace, like I think that's where he smashes it. But his runs, like I was watching him on live because they would live stream them, and I was like, I can walk that. That's no problem. But come race day, I go down and swim, and we had already filmed him swim before, so the Mars and Jules didn't come down for the swim, so I just swim, and then I had borrowed somebody's bike and I had asked someone to try and put on new pedals. The pedals didn't work. And so we're fiddling with the bike instead of eating. And the bikes take off. And so I jump on the bike trying to catch up to him. I don't even catch him. I lose him instantly. So I'm on my own trying to find these guys for the first, I think it was like 2 hours on my own on the bike to them where I knew that they looped down to a different part of the city. So Marsden and Julian were coming down. I had them throw the bike in the back of the car and I drove to where they were going to meet up at about mile 70 or something, like halfway through. I ended up biking, I think 90 miles that day. But again, like I haven't eaten, I haven't had enough time. The night before I did 80 thrusters at 115 pounds or something. Like I did this big thruster workout. So I'm just totally not ready for biking. All my fuel was in the truck. But they were following James and not back to get,
not currying you, right? They're trying to get the footage.
They're trying to get footage. And so, and not only that, they just like drove to the end point. So I'm 40 miles away biking without any food. And in my head, I'm like, they're definitely coming back for sure, right?
Yeah,
like
they know I'd help.
Oh no, they just straight up abandoned me. Knowing that my food's in the back. I'm like, you guys have my salt and electrolytes. And looking back on it now, I should have just been like, if it was today, I would have recognized like they're just going to do that. I need to take care of me.
Yeah.
And I would have stopped more along the way. But if you stop at gas stations, I'm paranoid because I've got somebody else's bike. I don't want to get it stolen. So finally, I found some guy that stayed with me for the last little bit. And he watched my bike while I went into I think it was just one gas station and slammed Swedish Fish and some Dr. Pepper and then got back on the ride. And got a second wind on the run and was able to do quite a bit of the run alongside James. But he would do this like 2 mile out and back, and I would run like 75% of the middle portion of it before losing him and
then he'd
catching
come
him
back.
Yeah. But so yeah, maybe I need to do an Ironman with James at some point to fix that. In my history.
Now that's going to sit in the back of your head, isn't it? That's going to be
the lesson I learned from that was, okay, if you're doing these things, you've got to eat so much food before. So carb load properly beforehand, and then do what you can to make your stomach secure so that you're not like having to use the restroom a lot, and being patient with food and water. And I know I can go a long time without water, but if I have it, I'm going to take advantage of it.
You mentioned something earlier saying like, when you went from the strength phase of your training to this endurance phase, you found this new love for just this sport and this new love for just pushing yourself physically that way. What was it? Like, what was the switch that came? Cause I think it was on your second Ironman you were doing, and that's when you're like, I love this. Like, what triggered in your mind?
Well, I think it comes back to that reward system, right? Like growing up, I was like, if I'm not inherently talented, it's not that cool if I'm working for it. And I didn't really have that big shift until I was training for strength stuff where I was so weak. But like, man, I was so excited the first time first time I back squatted 3 plates. If I hit 315, I was like, whoa, this is awesome.
That's pretty awesome. You get a little bend in the bar for the first time.
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
Like, yeah, I made it.
Or like, I remember the first time benching two plates. I was like, what? Like, I don't think I could do that now. But I remember being like, man, I just benched payday is what we call it, 225. Like I'm benching some man weight finally. And I had worked really hard to get there, but I hadn't done that with endurance. And what's been really fun, especially, so since September, I've tried to run an average of 4.2 miles every day. So I have the minimum of I have to run a mile. And then by the end of the week, it has to be 29.4 miles accumulated. So,
all right, just real quick, where the heck did 4.2 come from?
Because I turned 42 and my youngest son was like, hey, for your birthday, we're going to go run 4.2
There you
miles.
go. Okay.
Like, that's
That's it.
That's awesome.
That's it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks to family, it's 4.2. And I've kept that up for the entire year that I've been 42. But going into this, I fall in love with now when I'm traveling, I'm not just in the gym. So I do this, I help this new league called the World Fitness Project. I'm helping them produce some documentaries and some monthly videos of a day in the life of some of their athletes. And last November, I was scheduled to be in London and Belgium and 2 cities in Belgium and then back to the United Kingdom. And before, when I was doing this type of work, I would show up to this, I'd show up in Iceland and I'd film Annie Thorsdottir working out in her gym. And then I would finish her day of training and whatever else we needed to do in the interview. And then I'd get back in the car and go to the airport and go home. And like, I didn't see Iceland. I just saw a gym in Iceland. And it really hit me when I was on that trip last November, where I was in all of these cool cities and seeing the cities, because I was pushing myself to not just work out in the gym, but I was filming this athlete. And then when they were breaking or taking a nap, I was running 8 miles through this weird city in Belgium and loving the things that I'm seeing around me. And it's allowed me to see more of the world, to experience more. And then the type of endorphins that you get when you're running is very similar to what you get at the end of a CrossFit workout or a Metcon, but it's kind of like lengthened. Like they talked about the runner's high, that's real. And you definitely get that endorphin high when you finish a hard Metcon. But when you finish on a hard Metcon, you're usually just laying on the floor looking up at the gym ceiling and the ceiling fan. Yeah, just like I can't tell you how many times I've just been like laying on my back being like, this is awesome. But it's so much cooler when you get that high when you're in the desert in Badwater and the sun setting and it's this beautiful God's Majestics workout laid out in front of you, or you're in the middle of the Grand Canyon and the red rock walls are just lit up and it's perfect lighting and you're with 7 of your best friends and eating candy. Like there's nothing better than that. Like that to me is way more fulfilling and cool than the gym floor. But you're having a similar endorphin high, but enveloped in this different atmosphere. It's a new level.
I love that. And just, I mean, inspirational for sure. It is one of my favorite places to explore, new places to go for running in that area. It's different than driving or walking. Like it's just completely different. Another thing that I've loved really watching, and you talked about how important family is for you as well. I think it's been so cool watching you do some of these things with your family. I think one of the best episodes with super emotional resonance was with your sons, right?
Yeah, it's probably my favorite episode we've done for sure.
I mean, just so cool.
Yeah, as a father, it was the coolest parenting experience I could have asked for.
You just want to share kind of what you did with them and it's actually driven by them, right? Like it wasn't
100% by them.
It wasn't something you asked them to do.
So my son was 9. Sons are 9 and 11 at this point. They were at the finish line July 24th last summer watching me complete a marathon, the second official marathon I've ever done. And I'm PRing by 30 minutes and I'm stoked. And we're sitting at the finish line and we're reminiscing about 20 years earlier, or whatever it was, when I did this in I think it was 1997. So yeah, 18 years earlier. And they hear the story of my brother, Chad. Chad, I think he must have been 11 when he did his first marathon. He did it much younger than me. He's 2 years younger than me. And I think he did it a year or two before me. So he was either 12 or 11 and he completes a marathon. Again, I don't think he trained for it. I'll just say he didn't because that was just in standard. My son hears this and he's like, this looked kind of cool. I've run some 10Ks. We had done, some really gnarly 10Ks in Hawaii with these kids years earlier when they were like 5. So he knows he can suffer through some stuff. And he goes, like literally it was the week in between the 2 marathons, the 24th and the one I did with my cousin. He goes, Dad, I want to run a marathon. And I want to run it before I turn 10 so I can do it when I'm single digits. And I was like, oh no, what have I raised?
Yeah. And, you're like, here's the mirror. Oh
yeah, exactly. And I said, I kind of used it as an excuse to train with him essentially, but I said, okay, but because you're only single digits, we should train for it. Because if we're doing it when you're single digits, that means we have to travel somewhere to do it because there's not a good one locally. I knew we probably wouldn't be ready for St. George or could even get into St. George. And I think I had something that weekend. But I was like, look, if we're going to do this, we should train for it. And he was like, okay. And he was up for it. And I use that as an opportunity to every, 3 or 4 times a week to drag him out and go run and build mileage. And we started by going to the track just to see if he could run a mile. And I think we ran a mile. But the plan was this, I think the plan was to run 3 miles on the truck because that's what I was trying to do at that point. And it got way too hot. We learned pretty quickly that he, not just from this experience, but from training for the 10K, he doesn't handle heat well. So if he starts to get hot, his body overheats. So we had to figure out how to train when it was cool. And we would get up and run before school some days. And so we're running and the sun's coming up and it's, pitch black when we're leaving the house. And he was totally up for it. And over 6 months, we put in some miles together. And my older son, Maverick, is wildly talented when it comes to running, incredibly optimistic. And as long as you keep him fueled with some sugar, that guy can go for hours. And so he would come on occasion to train with us. He probably did 30% of the training with us. And we would usually time it around like, hey, we're going to do this long run. Maverick's going to come join us for the last 4 miles. And usually he'd come so the first time we ran a half marathon, we were just going to run 10 miles. And Maverick was going to join us for the last 4. But we got to his first mile and he was like, Finley, you look fresh. We should run a half marathon today. And basically talked Finley into going 3 miles further than he had thought he was going to run that day and was totally fine. But like I would use that as opportunities to tell them, hey, things are going to get tough, but as long as you keep eating and drinking, your body can go as long as you ask it to. And it wasn't all flowers and sunshine. There was definitely runs where we would go. I remember the second time we attempted a half marathon. That was the only time where we knew we were doing a half marathon going into it. I think that got into his head. And he kept thinking he needed to run faster every time we'd run. And so I had to kind of coach him through that. But we ran this one. We got 800 meters in and we had to like walk. And then that continued for the first 3 miles. Every other 400 meters, we'd have to walk. And it took us, I think, an hour and a half to go 3 miles walking flat. Not only could he not run, he would have to walk. And at times he would have to stop to just like sit there for a minute. By mile 4, he started to come back around and we ended up running a half marathon that day. It took us 4 hours. It took us an hour longer than the previous time. But he learned through that, like, I can do hard things. Yeah. I can get through it. I can figure out what I need to eat. And really, it's just a mental thing. Like he was just in his head about how tough this was going to be and couldn't get over that. And so I taught him that lesson of like, well, you can't focus on all 13 miles. You got to focus on the next 400 meters. Because if you can't go 400 meters, you're not going to make it 13. So focus on this and then focus on the next 800. And when you're feeling fresh, you worry about the pacing on the next mile. But we're not going to worry about a mile right now. We're going to focus on 200 meters because that's the distance we're struggling to go. So anyways, we do this whole 6-month training block and we get to the marathon and the little dude runs a marathon in 5 hours and 18 minutes. And my older son, Maverick, ran, he was right around 5 hours. And around this, again, we started struggling at about mile 18 or 19 because we made some mistakes along the way. And my older son was feeling good. So he just wanted to see if he could just finish. So I said, yeah, you can finish, but I really want all of us to cross the finish line together. So come back to get your brother. And I meant like, come like, 200 meters up from the finish line and we'll run the last
just like, just for just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah. Come back for the follow. No, Maverick finishes his marathon immediately. Like, he's like, I gotta go get my brother. He runs back a mile for the last mile to join us. So he ended up running like 28 miles that day.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
I love amazing.
That. Yeah. He was, and he kept saying, I kept saying, no pain, no story. That's a Jesse euphemism. Don't give pain a voice, but no pain, no story. But I kept saying that during some of our training runs, and on the race day, Maverick's like, well, I'm not in pain, so I don't have a story, Dad. This is kind of boring for me. Because he was so confident in how he did. So I need to get him, I need to see what he's fully made of and get him to sign up for a marathon. That said, so that was 6 months ago. they've done maybe 2 runs with me since, and they're just fully into parkour now. So they're,
which is great, right? Like
they're still being physically active. As a father, I'm like, oh, it would be fun if you guys join me for some of these long runs that I've got now. But they're still wildly physically active and doing some things that I can't do. So it's cool to see their shift.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a 3-month window when I ran with my son. He was going from 8th grade to 9th grade, and he's like, hey, I might do cross country. I was like, cool, let's start running together. 3 months later, he's like, Dad, why are you so slow? And I'm like, seriously, son? I can't run. I can't run with him anymore. He's too fast. Even for his slow training runs, I'm like, I can't keep up with you, buddy. But that 3-month window was fantastic.
Yeah, I gotta, that's what I'm worried about is after this, after this ultra, I need to figure out speed so I can keep up with, I got to be able to beat him in a 5K for at least a few more years.
Yeah, just a few more you might have. Heber, I mean, we could sit here and I would love to keep hearing your stories. But, at some point we actually do have to end the episode, but we'd love to have you back again, especially after Leadville, and hear how all that goes. But as we wrap up, we want to ask you the same question that we ask all our guests. Which is, after everything you've been through and everything you've pushed past, what remains?
What I love about these challenges is the type of person you become on the other side of them. And I think what remains is who you will be, who you're going to become. Because as you go into these things, you experience adversity, you experience challenges and trials, and you put yourself in situations that most people never want to experience unless it's, survival. So you put yourself almost into survival situations. I want to know that I'm still a good person when I'm in that position. If in real life, where I didn't just sign up for a problem, if I experienced hard times, what kind of personality I'm going to have? How am I going to treat other people? How am I going to deal with volunteers who aren't giving me the water correctly, or spilling some on my shoes, or how am I going to deal with my family and my kids? And I want to be a good person and be proud of who I am in those times. And so I think what remains is the type of person you want to be.
Well, that's Heber's story. And like every story on this show, the finish line wasn't the point.
If something in this episode stayed with you, write it down, sit with it, and then go do something with it.
If you're not on your path yet, this is your sign to start. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be real.
New episodes are dropping all the time. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this show meant something to you, share it with one person who needs to hear it.
I'm Nathan Baumeister.
And I'm Matt Carlson.
This is What Remains, an Okapi podcast. We'll see you next time.